Hello there once again, and welcome to tonight's reading in association with the Bealtaine at Home Book Club. Imagine we're halfway through May already. It's a pretty scary thought. Anyway, please keep an eye on the Bealtaine page and you'll see the events which will be happening over the next couple of weeks. There are a few more of these readings from the years that followed. There is a terrific interview with Mia Gallagher and Neil Hegarty, the author of The Jewel, which is still up there to be viewed. And then there'll be some posts which will be appearing in relation to the two books throughout the next couple of weeks. So somebody emailed me during the week and asked me about the different types of loss that I deal with in the novel The Years That Followed, and asked me if I would read something that related to that. So I certainly will, Isabel, with great pleasure. And in the first extract, which is about Callista, and it takes place in 1968. Callista is still very young. She married, this is no spoiler, she marries an abusive man when she's a very young woman of 17 because she's pregnant. And this extract looks at this relationship as it has developed over the intervening time, including the birth of the couple's first daughter, who's called Imogen. And really, I suppose what Callista has lost, what is coming to terms with in this extract, is the fact that she has essentially lost herself in the relationship, in the man that she has chosen to marry. So this is how we begin. It is midsummer 1968. Imogen is 16 months old, a swift and curious toddler. It is evening, and Callista keeps watch for Alexandra's arrival. She practices nonchalance before the mirror above the buffet. First, she tilts her head to one side, then the other. She smiles. Alexandros has told Callista recently that she is no longer attractive when she doesn't smile. She walks around the dining room table, touching the cutlery, moving the crystal a fraction to the right, a fraction to the left. She stops herself when she realizes what she's doing, presses her hands to her sides, and smooths the fabric of her dress. I'm turning into my mother, Imogen, she says. That's what I'm doing. The child smiles up at her. She's playing, an array of toy boats around her. Monkey clutched tightly to her chest. From time to time, Imogen slaps the shiny surface of the coffee table with delighted hands. Sometimes she follows her mother around the room. She often walks too quickly and topples over, but she gets up again at once. Callista loves her determination. She kneels on the floor beside her now. Clap hands, she says. Clap hands till Papa comes home. Imogen laughs. Now, Callista tells her, we must get ready to meet Papa at the door. He'll be here very soon. Tonight, she and Alexandros will be alone. Petros and Marula always go out for dinner on Thursdays, and Iliada, the housekeeper, has the evening off. Callista stops for a moment and hears the scrunch of tires on gravel. She checks her reflection once more, quickly, smooths her hair, allowing it to fall over one shoulder. She applies a little more lipstick. She holds Imogen as close to her as she can. She reaches the door just as Alexandros enters. He throws his keys on the hall table, his jacket and briefcase on the antique chair that Marula has placed over to the right. Callista pretends not to notice. Marula has asked her son sharply on several occasions not to leave anything on that small chair. It's a family heirloom, too delicate to support any weight. Callista will move Alexandros' things later when he isn't watching. Welcome home, Callista says now, taking a step towards her husband. She settles Imogen on one hip and lifts her face to be kissed. Hello, Alexandros says, though whether to her or to Imogen, it's impossible to tell. The baby holds out her arms to her father and Callista silently thanks her. Perhaps this will be one of the good evenings, after all. Hello, sweetie, he says, kissing Imogen on the cheek. She smiles at her father, one small hand reaching out towards his face. Alexandros kisses her again and turns to Callista. We are alone tonight? He asks. Yes, she says. We have the whole evening. Dinner's ready. I'll put Imogen to bed in a few minutes. Let me get you a drink first. She makes her way swiftly towards the drinks cabinet. Imogen has begun to wriggle, her eyes searching for her mother. She's getting tired, Callista says quickly. Alexandros does not like Imogen to cry. Without a word, he hands the baby back to Callista and takes his drink from her. Imogen has now begun to grizzle. I'll just run upstairs with her, then we can have dinner in peace. She flees. After dinner, Alexandros smiles at her. I have something for you, he says. Really? He nods. He lights a cigar, taking his time to roll it between his fingers, to observe the way the flame catches the tip and makes it pulse and glow. He likes to indulge in this ritual, one that Callista hates. It has been used too often to make her wait. Then he exhales slowly, watching the way the smoke curls bluely towards the ceiling. Get me my briefcase from the hall, he says. My photographs, Callista thinks. She hangs up Alexandros' jacket, retrieves the briefcase and comes back to the table. Shall I take these out of your way? She gestures towards the plates and dishes that are scattered over the table. Alexandros nods, all of his concentration now focused on his cigar. When she returns, there are 2 fat envelopes in front of him. She recognizes at once where he's had the prints developed. Anastasios Papadopoulos, the island's most famous photographer. Then he smiles at her again. Anastasio says that these are quite good. Alexandros nods at her approvingly. Not of a high standard, of course, but not bad at all. He pauses. I'm glad you've made such good use of my camera. I'm pleased you like them. Callista keeps her voice steady, casual. Alexandros pushes one of the envelopes towards her. Slowly, with fingers that want to tear it open to spill the eager photographs across the table, Callista pulls out a bundle of glossy black and white prints. Her fear subsides at once. The photographs are good. Very good. She has captured something fleeting, something elusive. There is almost a gentleness to Alexandros' face in some of the images, a vulnerability that is seldom there in reality. He had sat for her patiently one night, allowed her to move around him, obeyed her request that he look this way and that. It had been one of their better evenings, one where tenderness continued, where they had even laughed together. She has captured those moments of intimacy too. There is a palpable connection with her, the photographer, although she is invisible. Even beyond the frame, her presence is a potent one. Callista feels as though something inside her has taken flight. Alexandros liked having hobbies. They rarely lasted more than a month or 2. Painting had been one such passion, brief, fleeting, until it became apparent that he lacked both talent and patience. Then he became obsessed with classic motorbikes, until his mother put her foot down. And then the photography started. Alexandros arrived home one evening with 2 bags stuffed with lenses, tripods, light filters. He spent weeks poring over manuals, taking photographs, experimenting with timers. Callista had been fascinated from the beginning. She reaches now for 3 of the portraits, sets them out before Alexandros on the table. She stands beside him and begins to pull each of the images closer, one by one. You look so handsome, she says softly. I love your eyes in this one, and here, she draws the second one towards him. Your expression is strong and kind at the same time. Alexandros nods, allows Callista to place one hand on his. He does not pull away from her. I'd love to have these enlarged, to have them framed. They will look wonderful on our own wall someday. Callista holds her breath. Alexandros finishes his whiskey. We can arrange that, he says. And Callista thinks he is pleased. I will speak to Anastasios. Oh, please, let me do it, Callista says quickly. Let me choose the frames and have everything done in time for your birthday. Please, I'd like that, to be able to give you a gift that I've made. Something unique. Callista wonders if she has gone too far. But Alexandros smiles at her. All right, he says. I will arrange for Haridimos to drive you there. Let me speak to him in the morning. He puts his arm around Callista's waist. Let's go to bed, he says. You can clean all of this up. And he waves one hand, dismissing the table. In the morning. He stands up, and Callista follows. One of the good nights, she thinks. If only she can keep this mood. If only Imogen doesn't wake. If only. Her mother-in-law will not be impressed to find the dining room in disarray, but Callista no longer cares. Another evening has passed quietly. The camera is still hers. The portraits are a success. And she has the result she was looking for. She has now earned the exquisite opportunity to leave this house on her own, even for a couple of hours, and to learn how to breathe once again. So, at around the same time, in a completely different country, Callista's in Cyprus, Pilar is in Madrid, and this is what is happening in her life, and the losses, and the remorse, and the guilt she feels. No spoilers, though. Pilar goes walking. This is what Pilar does these days. She's reminded of her earliest days in the capital. Back then, she mapped city streets in her head as she walked. Making her way around in the early hush of Sunday mornings, Pilar's sense of being overwhelmed had slowly ebbed away. She came to enjoy the wide, tree-lined avenues, the imposing buildings, the elegant elderly ladies walking their dogs after Mass, before they stopped off at one of the many pavement cafes for an aperitif. Pilar loved the buzz of conversation, the drifting cigar smoke of the loud, suited men, the sense of all that peacock display that went hand in hand with the weekly paseo. She had enjoyed above all her place as an outsider. Pilar could own these streets in the same way as everyone else and stop for a coffee whenever she chose. She could observe and make judgments and watch the comings and goings of the affluent citizens of Madrid. She could even get happily lost among the meandering side streets, and nobody would stop her. Nobody would exclaim at her presence or ask what right she had to be there. Back then, the freedom of it all had been heady, exhilarating. These days, the walking has become a reflex, a way to fill the emptiness, a way to still the steady seep of disappointment at what her existence has become. She has tried many times over the past 3 years to change the contours of her life. She's tried to mold its shape into something that might fit her better, might chafe less against the tender flesh of her grief. But it's as though she has been handed some fixed pattern, some immutable laws that hem her in, that stitch and sew the fabric of her existence in a way that she is powerless to change. Everything she does has the familiar force of old habit. Once she threw out all the furnishings of her porteria, believing that new surroundings would help her meet the world in a new way. But even the newest of objects seemed to adapt themselves to the shape of whatever had been there before. Within weeks, her newly arranged workspace felt just the same as her old one. Pilar travelled then, secretly and compulsively. She went to Cuba, to New York, to London. Once she almost went to Cyprus, but her courage failed her at the last minute. Each time she bought new clothes, had her hair styled in a different way, stayed in new and apparently exciting places. But always each optimistic setting out, each longing for adventure became nothing more than a package holiday of sameness. Routine, tired, predictable, sometimes even squalid. And after each journey, Pilar returned home to the inevitability of her life, to the inevitability of her remorse. And so Pilar walks once more. This morning she has made her way towards the church of San Andres. She discovered it by chance some years ago. Once inside, she'd been soothed by its hushed and ancient tranquility. Its flickering, candlelit silence and its peace have drawn her back many times since. As she approaches the main door, Pilar stops. To her right, a few hundred meters away, a line of children make their way towards the church. They seem to shimmer as they walk. Their small hands are joined together in prayer, their faces luminous, their white suits and dresses brilliant in the May sunshine. At the head of the line and at the end, a nun walks. Their black habits are dark punctuation marks to the sentence that is the children. Pilar looks and waits, unable to move. All of her strength has deserted her. First Holy Communicants. She follows them inside the church and slips into one of the pews at the back. The church is almost empty apart from the children and the two nuns, one young, one elderly, who are speaking now, but Pilar is unable to catch what they say. And then at the older nun's signal, the children begin to pray. An elderly woman pushes her way into the pew beside Pilar. She nudges her after a moment, one bony elbow digging into Pilar's side. She looks like one of the market women that Pilar sees every day, her grey hair scraped back into a bun, her dress black and dusty. Her fingers are dirty, knuckles swollen and twisted into the strange roots of arthritis. Pilar sees that rosary beads are wrapped around both hands, the small crucifix swinging free as the woman lifts it to her mouth to kiss the figure of a tiny Christ. Angelitos, she whispers as she nudges Pilar for the second time. Her eyes glitter, little angels. Pilar feels a lump in her throat. The children rehearse their hymns, their voices high and sweet in the incense-filled air. Her eyes cannot help themselves. They seek out all the small boys with hair so black it sheens blue. Those little angels are the same little bastards that thieve from my stall every week. The old woman hisses now, nodding her angry head in the direction of the altar. A thin thread of drool clings to one corner of her down-turning mouth. Pilar looks at her. She has no answer. She glances once more towards the children and sees only questions, and she cannot bear it any longer. She stands up and flees, pushing her way past the hissing woman, not caring if she topples her, not caring any longer whether she hurts her. Old women like that terrify Pilar. They bring with them the bitter air of her native village everywhere they go. Okay, that's it for this evening. Thank you very much for joining me. And I'll be here again on Thursday, as usual, at 7:30. So don't forget, keep your eye on the Bealtaine Festival page, and particularly on the Bealtaine at Home book club. So keep well, enjoy the lessening restrictions, but take care nonetheless. All the best for now.